Everybody understand? And so we're restricted by time, and that stops us in what we call chronos, or it deals with time. But then God said there is another dimension that a person has to leap into, and the only way you can leap into it is by faith. So faith is the what? Substance of things hoped for. It's being able to see past chronos, being able to see past time into the next dimension, which is the fifth dimension, which deals in the kairos realm. So being able to see into the next dimension causes me to see what God has already seen. Now here's something that blows my mind. The text says in Ecclesiastes, the 3rd chapter, what is, or what has been, has already, or what is coming, what has been has already been. In other words, God, the past has already passed with God. Even though it's in our now, it has already passed. Your life, in other words, is nothing but a rerun. Now here's where it gets even a little deeper. You think that you're living in the moment and what you're experiencing has never happened. But to God, what you are experiencing has already happened, and you're just catching up to it. And because you're catching up to it, it looks like it's new. Faith allows you to see that where you are, you have already been, and it causes you to see what God has for you. Now here's where it gets exciting. Therefore, God says, what you need, I've already blessed you with, but you got to be able to see it in order to experience it in your now. Did y'all catch that? I said in your now. And so faith then is not something that we call out or we claim or we try to name it and claim it and say, this is what I want. No, faith is not. Faith is real. It's tangible. It's what has already been. Now let's make it a little more practical. Watch this. Imagine, if you will, there was a time machine set up. And when you stepped into this time machine, it took you back 20 years into the past. Now, for some of us, 20 years into the past, we would be young children. For others, 20 years into the past, we'll just be old. But let's just say you stepped back, and then when you stepped out of the time machine, you are now 20 years in your past. Imagine what you would say to you if you saw you 20 years ago. 20 years ago, I'm 30 years old. 20 years ago, I'm at the tail end of my career as a police officer. 20 years ago, I'm just launching into ministry. I've been in ministry 2 years. 20 years ago, I have small children that I don't know what's going to happen, what their future is going to be like, how I'm going to pay for college. 20 years ago, I'm a newly married man. 20 years ago, I have to deal with some issues that I'm not quite sure of. 20 years ago, I step back in time and I look at me and I tell me, now this is what you're going to experience in 20 years. And I begin to share with me what I'm going to experience. Now, when I share with me that 30-year-old 20 years ago, what I'm going to experience, that 30-year-old has to process what I'm telling them has already taken place. You can't alter it. You can't change it. It's coming your way. You might as well process it and rejoice in it. So when they tell me that in 20 years from now, you're going to have a nice church, and 20 years from now, you're going to be blessed and highly favored. In 20 years from now, your children would have graduated from college and are successful. In 20 years from now, you will have experienced 25 years of marriage. Now, that was enough to make me shout right there. In 20 years from now, you will have experienced financial freedom. In 20 years. Now, with that said, when I tell myself 20 years earlier that this is what I'm going to experience, here's what has to happen. That boy, that young man that's 30 years old now must believe what that 50-year-old person that's been in the future is now telling them. And because I believe that, then that 30-year-old will start acting like somebody who's going somewhere. See, when you believe something, then I'm going to experience some hurdles and some hills in my life. Now, here's what will happen. After that 50-year-old say, this is what you're going to experience, he gets back in the time machine, push the button, and go back to the future. But he leaves that 30-year-old to sit there and ponder what's been said. Now here's how faith works. Then that 30-year-old now says to himself, I've been told that I'm going to be successful in the future. I've been told that my children are going to be all right. I've been told that I'm going to have good health. I've been told that God's going to bless me. I've been told that I'm going to be highly favored. But then that 30-year-old will experience some obstacles and some hills and some things that are contest that.